Excellent. All right, we are official. We are here for our fourth webinar of our six-part leadership coach training series. I'm Jen Barley.
I'm Karen Sullivan, and I got to tell you, Jen, I just got distracted because the name that I haven't seen in a really long time.
Three series. And people do this particular series, we send them out usually within a 24-hour period. So we're super excited about today. So Karen and I are the owners of KickStart Your Edge, and we have two different parts of our business. One part of our business is that we work within corporations doing leadership development, coaching, and really helping teams and groups of people within the organizations get better at what it is that they do. The way that we do it in our approach is about leading yourself, then leading others, then leading the business. And there's a lot of different approaches that we do, and we are in and out of organizations every month, and we have lots of different projects and experiences. The second part of our business is we work with coaches to be better coaches. Karen and I have been coaching since 2007 and 2010, and we have been helping people up their skill, up their game, and take their own business to the next level through confidence and coaching skills or through a pretty dynamic, powerful toolkit. So I just want to share that because we have our Get Real Leadership and Corporate Coach Training Program that's starting in May that might be a really good fit for you if you're looking to get a deep toolkit, if you are looking to make connections and learn how to apply everything that you've learned about coaching into a corporate leadership group, not-for-profit, educational institution, however you want to look at it, environment in a new and in a dynamic way. That was a mouthful, Kara. I can't hear you.
Okay, so I had to mute myself for a sec because I was choking on a cough drop. But just in case you were wondering, I'm fine. However, I can't find the cough drop. But anyway, so the thing here about what Jen just said, which is really important, that I want to make sure that we just tap on for a second, is that during your coach training program, most of you probably got some pretty great ahas about yourself. Right? You had that personal development kind of thing going on, and you got to, you learned more about yourself and you understood more about yourself. Now the thing is we saw people they learned all these great things about themselves, but then they're scratching their head or their ass and saying, now what? So especially in the corporate and the leadership realm. And what it is that we developed this because so many people were saying to us, okay, now what? So I learned about myself. Now what do I do? And we are the how. And a lot of times, a lot of you guys have heard me say, F the how. Well, we're the how, but we also incorporate what's important to you, the why you're showing up and doing the things that you're doing. And we help put the pieces together to help you be successful and make lots of money if that's something that you want to do.
Love it. Okay, I know it's so funny. I just realized that my whiteboard, or it's our whiteboard in my office though. I'm like, what is on that? So that's actually a program we're just creating. So this is us in action doing our stuff. Okay, so Kara, I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of announcements, and then let's dive deep into exactly what it is that we're going to cover. So today, and let me tell you first, today we are going to be covering the team coaching. We're going to be talking about some different articles and ideas from some of the people who do team coaching, share some of that in Choice Magazine, all of that to come. We'll do our Kickstart Your Edge spin, and then we will do a Q&A, which is really Fantastic. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that you may have gotten an email from us this week. If you are interested in talking more about the program, because that's part of what we do, Erica or Alan is going to be your go-to person. And you received an email either introducing Erica or introducing Alan. If you just joined the webinar this week, you did not receive that email, but they're your personal contact to be able to talk to about the program, what we offer, and what it is that we do. But let's jump into the content because that's why people are here, Kara. So today we're actually going to be talking about the latest edition of Choice Magazine, and we're going to highlight, we believe, 4 different contributors who wrote various articles about team and group coaching. And what we mean by highlight is we're going to share some of the nuggets of the core of their articles about what they're seeing as trending in team coaching, and then we're going to add our own spin to it as well. So you ready to get started?
Are you talking to me? Yes. But one of the things too, guys, if you don't subscribe to this magazine, my recommendation is do. It's a great resource for you. You're gonna, it's like any other magazine. There's some really great stuff in it, and there's some stuff that you just shake your head and go, yeah, seriously. Like for instance, talking about, just kind of spirit cat cards. But so that's not, it works for some people. However, it doesn't work for us. So, and yes, that is such a thing. But if you take what works for you from this magazine, it is a huge, huge resource. And it actually helps you see so many different perspectives in the coaching world. Because you only know what you know. You can only see what you see. But some of these things allow you to put on a different set of lenses and see things a different way. Sometimes you're scratching your head going, seriously? And other times you're scratching your head going, wow, that is amazing. I would have never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I have to say, if I had a wish for the magazine, I want it to be a little bit more edgy, for sure. I want it to be a little bit more out of the box in terms of approaches, ideas, and pushing the envelope a little bit. But we've been subscribing for years, and we save all of the issues, and it is definitely a really good resource. So let's jump into the first one, shall we, Kara?
Let's do, Jen, go.
Okay, so the first team and group coaching article that we're going to be talking about is by Jennifer Britton. And she wrote the article, I can't say it, called Group and Team Coaching, the Landscape of Coaching Many. And Jennifer is fairly well known for specializing in group coaching. And so she shares a lot of the different things and her different viewpoints on the team coaching landscape. I think the key thing here is that she has 3 critical success factors that she has highlighted in her article, and we're listing them here. So I'm going to go ahead and share what they are, and then Karen's going to start to talk about the first one. So the first one is strong focus on process. The second one is utilizing a variety of engagement strategies. And the third is a focus on group cohesion and match. So, Kara, why don't you share a little bit about your thoughts on the first one?
So the thing here with the strong focus, and we're gonna pull things out of this that we thought were real important. And as Jen put on that first slide, then we're going to give you a little bit of our spin, because this is a little bit more structured. This is a little bit more traditional. So we're going to throw some things in here later. But what Jennifer talks about, and she's written a couple different books, I believe. I don't remember what the names of them are on group coaching. So she is essentially considered one of the coaching experts regarding group and team coaching. But when you think about the strong focus on process, it's about, it's about how do the group members bring their expertise and have a process for all of that to actually work. And it's funny, I'm just going to tell a little bit of a sidewards kind of story here. I'm recently involved with a board at our condo association here. And it's funny because I'm just starting. I don't actually really even start until the 22nd. But there's all these different things that are going on here about landscaping and trees and beaches and all these different things. And this morning I got an email about, something about, all right, this team needs to make a decision. And I'm sitting here going, all right, well, first of all, this team needs to become a team. So it's about the process piece of this, right? So how do you actually figure out, make the team, but then form processes that they can actually follow? Because if you don't have a process, right, and that was my last question to this group, was just like, all right, guys, how does this team or this board make decisions? Because it's just random things thrown out there, then there's 5 or 6 different ships going in a different directions. But if we can all, like this says, focus on the team and the process, bring this team together, get them to understand a process and what's their role in that process, then it's more likely for something to actually be successful. So then, what's the next steps? What are people committing to? What's the accountability piece of it? Instead of, well, we need to make a decision. Well, yeah, no kidding, you need to make a decision, but let's look at the process on how it is that you actually want to make those decisions.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, great example. I know that's been a real eye-opener. I said to Karen today, I'm like, I think you and the board should design a team alliance. I did. But that's because we're geeks. So I love that. The second one, the focusing on the process. One thing I want to throw in there, it is really about how do you set up the engagement with the team and how do you co-create that? How do you design it? What is it? And really making sure that the critical success factors are that expectations are set, they're acknowledged, and they're revisited often. So Karen and I do this process with the team anytime we first work with them, and we come up with these lists and these outcomes of how basically the engagement's going to go, and we bring that back to each and every time we get together with the team. So even if we're doing Zoom, it's on a slide with here's our agreements. If we're doing it in a group, it depends on the group. We may hang it up on the wall on a flip chart, or we may put it in a slide. It depends. But it's the co-created process that's going to determine the success of the team.
And the cool thing about that is when things start to go sideways, you have something to dial back into. So that's huge.
So I'll take number 2, utilizing a variety of engagement strategies. So the key thing here is to remember that individuals are engaged through different activities. Everybody has a different learning style and a different learning preference. So we have people that are visual learners, people that are kinesthetic learners, people that, learn through hearing. So all different ways. So how do you mix and match different engagement strategies to keep the team focused and not catering, but making sure that everybody's learning style is incorporated? Engagement strategies are far beyond just saying, so let me ask a provocative question. This is what kind of tools are you going to use? What kind of visuals? When do you strategically do independent exercises and when do you do group exercises? It's really important to have many tools to be able to pull out on the fly so that people are engaged. If the energy in the room dips, how do you bring that energy back up? When things get tough, how do you start to bring up some of the new ways of working through it? It's funny, I was talking with an amazing coach earlier today, and she was sharing that sometimes the dysfunction of a team can be a little bit overwhelming, right? So if you're working with a team and the dysfunction starts to come out, how do you actually deal with it? And it's interesting because Karen and I have this one exercise that we do. It's an edge model. And basically it pulls out all the dysfunction as a group, but in a very neutral way. So we're able to identify what's not working, what could be better, why they aren't getting to what it is that they really should be getting to. It gets it all out in a very supportive way, a non-threatening way, and a not finger-pointing way. And so it's about then being able to use that engagement strategy to then work through it.
So Jen, the number 3 here, the group cohesion and match, and I'm going to read this right from this magazine, guys, because I want you to hear what she has to say, and then I want to throw something else out there. It says supporting group members and articulating their individual goals, focus, and roadmap. Group coaches will want to support the identification of common ground and the connection of group members early on, so there's enough focus for traction, right? And I love that about getting aligned. I love that about making some tractions. But one of the things that I'm less concerned about here is the individuals and their individual goals. What we do when we talk about teams, it's we want to make the team goal bigger than anybody's individual goal, because the team is what we're really trying to build. The team together is going to get a lot further and a lot further together than they will separately. So it's understanding that, yes, some people might have their individual goals, but what's the big picture look like, and what does the team really need, and have them align. And that builds the cohesion in the beginning on how can we align it? What does this team really need to be successful?
Love it. So we're getting a couple of questions about the EDGE model. And the truth is that it's a pretty complex model to be able to explain in the webinar. It's about a 45 to an hour and 15-minute process that we take people through. The nuts and the bolts of it is basically it's uncovering the obstacles that are getting in the way of the team being the type of team that they need to be. So it's a little bit too complex here to be able to do that, but that's the theory behind it about having the team go to the next best version of themselves. Fair question though. All right. So here we move on. So let's go to the next article that we found. This is about what is called, let me flip to it. It's Coaching Teams Developing a Strong Foundation by Terry Hildebrandt. And he shares many different things here. And it's about how to really be able to create a strong team foundation, okay? So what we have on the left-hand side are the categories. So we have a bucket of strategy, a bucket of structure, a bucket of processes, culture, and then measurement and results. And then it has the subcategories in the blue are all of what comes under that. So the interesting thing about being a coach, for doing some team coaching, is there are certain areas that you can even specialize in, right? So you could be focused just on the team strategy and helping teams be able to put those together, or focusing on structure or processes, etc., and being able to see how they're all connected and how they build on each other. Before we hear some of Karen's insights on this, I will say it's interesting. We, at one organization that we work with, anything that has to do with structure in terms of roles, responsibility, org charts, and the organization, we usually partner with HR to lead that part of it. They lead the structure. We lead the purpose, the vision, the objectives, the initiative, and a lot of the culture that needs to happen within a team. But a lot of times people will say, well, we don't have clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and we really need to see how this all fits together and who does what. And we usually let HR run that part of it because, one, there's a lot of ins and outs of having to know nuances for job descriptions and things like that. And it's a great partnership to be able to find out when there is that gap there, how do we use some of the internal resources to be able to drive that process?
Yeah, Jen, I think out of all of these, that's the one that by this model, that's the one we're probably the least involved with, because like you just said, it's their agency, it's their organization, and those roles and responsibilities are essentially defined from within. Now, if you want to talk about roles and responsibilities sometimes on a team, that's something that we do work with them about? Like, okay, great. What are the strengths, or what are the things that the people on the team have working for them, and how do we pull that out? But the overall big picture roles and responsibilities, yeah, we let them handle that. But when you look at this, if you think about it, you could be the strategy coach for an organization. How do you help them figure out what their purpose is, what their vision is, what their mission is, what their objectives are, and what initiatives are they going to take to actually get that? And that doesn't just mean the organization's, let's say, purpose. It could mean the team's purpose. So how do you connect the team's purpose to the overall organization's purpose? How does this team create a vision that aligns with the vision that the overall company has? So these are some fun things to go in and work with. The process is part of it. Again, this is a little bit more about, how are you, what is it that you have to deliver? What are the deliverables for the team, right? What is it that you want to walk out of this with? What kind of communication are they having? And it's funny, I was just talking to a guy this morning who works for a big company, and he's just like, all right, well, I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell them this, and I'm going to tell them this, and I'm going to tell them this. And I'm like, yeah, so how's that really going to work for you? And he just started laughing. He goes, yeah, it's probably not. So he's like, how can I come up? The process piece of it is where you can implement your coaching skills to help people communicate a lot better, to get better decision-making, to have more communication, and what it is that we really need to improve on the processes.
It was interesting, Kara, because I'll be honest, I listened to you talk to that person through the wall.
And what's funny is you probably remember more things that I said than I did.
Yeah, totally, right? I do. It's so funny. We have a little system. Sometimes I'll hear her saying, Kara will be over there and she'll be like, that guy, he's really tall, and what's his name? And I'll just text her and I'm like, Robert. So, and that's a little side note, but I did hear her saying, so his approach was, is my communication working with you? Right? And that was a big thing where Karen, even just a slight wording of being able to say, if you were to ask it is what communication works for you, what kind of different dynamic, what kind of conversation is that going to be? How is that going to open people to being able to approach you in a different way and get the information that's going to be meaningful? When people say, is this working for you? People are like yes or no. When you ask a what question, what communication does work for you, people then get to share their ideas and their thoughts and really what's going on. So I just actually say this because that's a really important part of it. Those minor tweaks and being able to help leaders approach things different is going to help overall.
You know what, too, Jen, just to piggyback on that, too, I just want to throw something out there. Because the guy that I talked to this morning is the head of a team. And Jen and I have worked with his team for probably about 1.5 years now. And the thing is that him and I still connect. We do some sporadic work with his team, but him and I are still plugged into, this is part of what we do, too, into some individual coaching sessions. And he's kind of high enough up there on the food chain for me to say, okay, yeah, I want to work with this guy. Because we deal with a lot of different people, but the SVPs, the VPs, some higher ups in the organization, Jen and I love working with them. And this is a guy, like I said, been working with for a while. And it was funny this morning, he started laughing. He was like, oh my God, it's 8:57 and I got my aha. He goes, I was getting a little nervous because usually I have my huge aha before that. And it was about flipping things around and about asking questions and about taking that step back and looking at things a different way. But there's every single time when you have these team things, like how do you want to stay plugged into the team? How do you want to stay plugged into the leader? Because that's really, really important.
It's interesting because this is actually, the way that they have it in the magazine is, if you can kind of see, there's a little grid that goes across that has these 5 different elements. So it would be interesting to be able to use this as well to be able to have your conversations with your decision makers about working with their organization and saying, so, what is it that you really struggle with? And what are you hoping will be different with this team? And as you're finding out those questions about why hiring you, giving them this to say, where do you think things are going really well? And where do you think they aren't of these 5 categories? And start to use this to guide conversations about the work that you possibly can do. Now, truth be told is sometimes leaders are going to say, oh, it's going to be right there in that roles and responsibility and charts and blah, blah, blah. And that may not be your sweet spot, but it's then about how do you refer out to other people who do that, being able to collaborate with other coaches who might have areas of specialty that they could zone in on depending on what the answer is. But you could do a really interesting interactive discovery call. I'm not big on that term, discovery call for corporate, but it doesn't matter. It's a project possibilities meeting. It would be interesting to be able to use this to guide you. Okay.
So Jen, you want to answer Wendy's question here? How do you handle when the leader might be thinking differently than some of the members of the team? Well, and I'm going to let you answer this in a sec, but I'm going to jump on here really quickly, is that I want the leader to be thinking differently than the members of the team. I don't want people to be thinking the same. I want people that are going to challenge each other. I want people that see things differently and that can eventually align. So we want there to be somewhat of a disruptive approach to things. And one of the things that we do is we kind of encourage conflict, healthy conflict, because we want to create an environment where there's trust first. And so then after the trust comes the healthy conflict, but we don't want a bunch of sheeple that are going to be like, okay, yeah, whatever the leader says. We want the guy in the room that's going to poke people, and we want him in there because he's kind of like the shit stirrer. We want him to stir things up. We want him to get people to see things from a different perspective. So it's funny, sometimes we'll see an attendance roster of people that are invited to a meeting, and this is how we develop these relationships over time. Well, we'll email the SVP or the VP and say, hey, can you have this guy come into this meeting? Because we want something, we want him to shake things up. So we want to make sure that there's the environment where you can have a healthy conflict, but then figure out, great, what's the best thing for the team, and then help that. Yeah, I said sheeple, SHEEPLE, like sheep that follow.
All right, so let me throw a couple things here because I think we might even have a different perspective. So one is, what do you do when somebody thinks differently about a topic at work? Another way to read Wendy's question could be, what do you do when the leader sees the team's dynamic differently than the team sees it? So that's different, right? So a couple things to think about with that is that perception is reality. Karen and I have a few things. Yeah, you may not see it that way, but if it's perceived that way, how is that affecting the team? You may not agree, but if the majority of the people tend to be moving in that direction, what's really at stake here? A couple other things that come up with thinking about different things is Karen and I have a great question that we've learned along the way, and what's 2% true about what they experience? And that's about showing that, another concept, everyone's always right, but only partially. So using some of those threads and those dynamics and those concepts and principles of how we approach things allow the conversations to be had. The next thing I want to say, David, it's interesting. You said make sure there's buy-in from leader that conflict is okay at the moment to make sure they don't walk out. Here's our philosophy. If conflict is avoided because it's not okay at the moment, that in itself is its own form of conflict. So the conflict is there if we ignore it or we don't address it. Now, you can parking lot it to say, that's something let's take that offline. Still important, need to focus on it. But in terms of time or productivity or purpose of this meeting, we're going to go a different direction. But you still have to call it out if it's something needs to be resolved. Conflict is not bad. Conflict is two different opinions being presented and two different sides of something. But it could actually be, can we create this amazing thing or this amazing thing, and having different viewpoints that come with it. So just something to consider. Now, if you want to, before the group coaching happens, you have a meeting with the leader to say, so how, here's usually my approach when the elephant comes in the room or we have conflict that arises, is I'm a firm believer in healthy conflict, and here's my process and methodology around managing conflict in groups. Are you okay with that? So being able to have a stance on how you want to handle stuff, what's the downside, what's the upside, and let's say they say, yeah, we're not going to do that, then say, okay, so then how will you address conflict if that's not an approach you want to go? So those kinds of conversations and setting expectations with the team leader outside of the group is fine. But a lot of what we do is for Karen and I to say, this is how we roll. This is why we roll the way that we roll. And this is the benefits of it. And then having a dialogue about what's coming on. Okay?
And I think too, Jen, just to kind of just jump on for a sec there, is that especially with if there's no conflict per se, the team's not going to stretch. So we encourage it. And the thing is that no matter what, we set things up to help the team right from the beginning know that they're going to get through it. And then the other side of it is what it is that they're actually looking for. So we encourage it, and we ask them we just ask them to bring it.
Cool. All right, let's go on to the third article concept that we want to share. This is from the article Expanding Team Coaching Capabilities for Impact. It's by Laura Hauser, and it's the 4 essential lenses for seeing the who, what, when, and how of teams and organizations. A couple of things that Laura shares in her article is that she feels that team coaching is much more complex than individual coaching. And I'm going to say that Karen and I wholeheartedly agree. We don't think it's more difficult. We do think it's more complex. There's a lot more things to manage. So it's not that it's harder. It's just there's different things that you need to be aware of. You have to be more aware of group dynamics. You have to be more aware of personalities and energies and what's happening in the room, and truthfully what happens when you're not in the room together. So it's about toggling between the individual's voice and the collective systems approach to the group's voice as well. So there's a lot of different interesting dynamics that do come with it. So I agree, more complex, not more difficult, but things to think about.
Yeah, because if you think about it, right, what you're doing there is you might have, with a team, let's say you have 15 people on a team and you're dealing with a lot of different personalities. And there might be sometimes when you do really big groups of people that they're part of an organization, but you might have, different people are showing up in different ways. So it's, when you think about the who of a team, in the respect from this article, it was like, who does the team need to interact with? One of the things, and the team interdependencies, what we like to do, how Jen started in the beginning, we like to talk about, leading yourself, leading others, and then leading in the business. And when we talk about the who piece of it first, we want to know who these people are themselves first, and then what are they bringing to the team to then identify who the team is. And I think what happens a lot of times is that I've seen that hadn't been so successful is that people will go in and they'll just expect the team to all be aligned as like, okay, great, here's how we're going to show up. And then, this is how we're going to show up to other people. But I think that sometimes that's about putting the cart before the horse.
So let's do this, Kara. Let's talk about the who, the what, the when, and the how from Laura's perspective. And then I have a couple other thoughts that I throw in there as well. Okay.
Go. Yep.
So it's about looking at the team through these different lenses. And the team, the who is going to be, what are the teams, as Karen just said, who else do they work with, right? So what we have found is that more and more organizations are matrix organizations where you have your direct line, and then you also have indirect lines, or you have a global part of the business, and then you have the North America part of the business, and there's different agendas and different things that are going on. But this is really about who the team actually works with in order to achieve their goals, and being able to see that and seeing that it goes far beyond just maybe the 7 people in the room or the 15 people in the room, and how that works. The what lens is actually around team coordination and results, and this is about goals. What do they need to accomplish? What is it that from an operational perspective, what are their priorities? What are the different roles that come in? So this is about sort of, if you think of a baseball team, who's the pitcher, who's the catcher, who's the shortstop, and when a fly ball is hit into left field, where does everybody move and how do they go? How'd you like that, Kara?
That's funny, Jen.
I did a sports reference.
Yeah, I know.
And if it's a sacrifice fly, then what? Right? So I'm just throwing out little terms of things I don't know much about. But that's really what it is. The win for the maturity is actually looking at where is the team in terms of coming together. And for different priorities, are they at the beginning, the middle, or the end? Where is the team maturity? Karen and I, well, I'll come back to that in a moment. The how is the team actually interacting, right? So it's being able to see the team through these lenses to be able to pull things together. Now, from a Jenn and Karen perspective, two things that we want to highlight here is the team maturity. We worked with an organization where 2 teams became one. They were brand new. Half the team worked together for a really long time. The other half worked together for a really long time. But the cultures, the processes, the personalities of this merger were completely night and day difference. So they were a young team coming together with an old mindset. They were very into, we always do things this way. And that team, they move too slow. They're too process oriented. And then that team would say, well, they're reckless and they have no work-life balance. So then it's about, well, what is the new culture that needs to be created through that? The other thing that I wanted to jump on that Karen said that I thought was really great was about who a team is, right? And who are you? And it's also about where team loyalty actually is. When you're in a hierarchy situation, right? So you're looking at, you have an executive team that is reporting into somebody, and each team member has their own team. Most people look at their loyalty as the people who report to them, when their loyalty, in theory, should be with their colleagues to their higher boss. So that means that not talking smack about other teams, right? That's about how do you have each other's back at the executive level. More importantly, then even, it doesn't mean you don't lead, it doesn't mean that you don't inspire, it doesn't mean that you don't motivate, it doesn't mean you don't work together with your direct reports, but where is the line of loyalty to be able to have the team operate its best? So really being able to look at that who of that, like that particular team that I'm thinking of, was eye-opening, because it had to shift from downstream to colleagues and upstream. It was very interesting. Very interesting.
And you know what, Jen, I feel like this is sometimes a real tough one for people to wrap their heads around. And I'll be honest, guys, it took a real long time for me to wrap my head around this, because I would think back to my cop days, right? So when I was a when I was a lieutenant or when I was a sergeant, like my thing was that I want to make sure that I took care of my guys. And especially when I was a lieutenant, like I was in charge of the patrol division, and the patrol division and the traffic and all that kind of stuff. And I really liked those guys. And we had a great working relationship with the people that reported to me. And the interesting thing was that I was also part of the command staff. So it was, myself, the chief, captain, another lieutenant, and I would go into this meeting and I would want to smash my head against the wall because I felt like there was a lot of old school thinking. And the thing was that I had to get to the spot of being like, okay, I need to be aligned with what's going on in this room, in spite of a lot of it not completely aligning with how I like to do things. So figuring out what that balance was, because in that room with that command staff, that's where the department was going. And then figuring out, okay, great, how do I still be there for my guys, show up the way that they need me to show up and how I wanted to show up, and still balance the other side of it. So sometimes this is a little tricky. And I found that working with different people, different leaders, sometimes that's their thing, that's where they're having that problem. It's all right, well, the SVP is making these decisions, and I'm like, what the hell are you thinking? How do I stay aligned with that and then also help the people that are reporting to me? So this one gets a little tricky sometimes.
It's interesting. This is great. So Deborah says, loyalty to peer colleagues upstream, as you say, would seem to cultivate a culture of closed ranks and foster distrust among the teams you're leading. How does that work? Because at the end of the day, loyalty and leadership is 360, not just up. Totally true. So this isn't then about not sharing information. The loyalty is to the alignment of the vision that the team is taking. Right? So often what people will do is they may go to their own downstream teams and say, I don't agree with what's going on. This isn't the way we should be going. This is what we should be doing. And it's about not being aligned with the vision at the higher level. And then talking about that creates distrust then, not between the direct report and the leader, but then with the overall leadership. So it's about being in alignment. It's about understanding that alignment, and then it's about disagreeing in the right venue of being able to do that. So it's still empowering. It's still the team mission. It's still open communication. The loyalty, though, is to having each other's back, explaining things in a way that makes sense to the health of the organization. It means that it's about behind closed doors, having the healthy conflict with your colleagues and upstream that you need to, in order to have all voices heard, a decision made, and then truly how to then motivate people to go and carry out the decision. So that's what we're talking about with where the loyalty actually is, and being able then to have a common unified front towards the aligned visions. So it is, loyalty and leadership is 360. Part of getting loyalty, though, is not about breaking down other teams and organizations and what they're doing, but more about being solution focused.
And I think the thing here too, Jen, is what I feel like that a lot of times we strive to do, and we have the luxury too of working with a lot of different levels in organizations, from executive teams, from SVP levels to the executive teams, and then the executive team leaders to their different teams, whether it's sales or marketing or finance, whatever that actually, HR, whatever that actually might be. So the thing is we help them kind of take a coach approach to, truthfully, coaching up. So how do you have the conversations with the next level above you that are going to create more of an overall picture of where the organization wants to go? But we really do that a lot. And just like I was just like Jen had listened to me having these conversations on the phone with this guy this morning, was about, okay, how can he use some coaching questions to get what it is that he needs from his team? And the other part of that too was, how does he go to his boss and have almost kind of the same conversations, but, you know, figuring out what's the best way for him to communicate with her. What are the things that he needs to be more effective than to you know, to work with his team? So it really does go both ways. And like I said, we do have a lot of luxury to basically say, okay, great, we could see the big picture, which is really cool. A lot of times you can't. And when you can't, that's when you want to help arm people with what we say, the tools of coaching up, because I think the tools of coaching up is magical for some people.
Cool. Good. So yeah, this isn't about my loyalty is only to that. It's the loyalty to the vision and to what the team decides. Okay, Kara, we got to keep on rocking and rolling here. So the last article we're going to share with you is a article called From Zombie to Zealots, and it's Team Coaching Reawakens the Spirit at Work by Darylyn Mitch. I think I got that right. And where this article then follow or talks a little bit about how to change the same old into people that are passionate about what they do. So Kara, I'm going to have you start with this one.
So one of the things here, Jen, I thought it was really cool that they talked about, well, obviously a zombie, right? Overworked, dehumanized, the whole thing. You're just walking around. It's like what we used to call it in the cop world, you know, retired on active duty. You're just there in your body and you're essentially doing nothing. But to the, I don't know if you say this word, zealots or zealots.
I say zealots.
Okay,
but I'm probably wrong because I say crayon funny.
Yeah, and it's a crayon. But anyway, I love the definition that they use no, I can't say it. The word, the zealot, actually is a champion for the human spirit, a curious, passionate, and courageous human being, a contagious change agent, and enthusiast who makes no distinction between work and play. To them, work and play are really the same game. So how do we get to a place where organizations are full of creative and energetic people who are ready to play? And I got to tell you, I think that right there is like, it's how do you generate the buy-in to get people to want to be that? And as the facilitator, as the person leading teams, one of the ways that, you know, if you look at this first thing where it's the leader promoted to capture, you know, it's so many times the new leaders go to, you know, the new leaders are yesterday's star performers, as they talk about it. And the interesting thing that happens a lot of times too is that some of these leaders were really, really great at what they did. And then what happened is you almost set them up for failure. And I'm just going to tell a really quick story. I did a training with a car dealership out in Ohio. And it was funny because the general manager, great guy, do anything for his guys. And for the most part, his people would run through walls for him. And because he really cared that much. The interesting thing is these were the guys who were his next line of management were the people who were really, really great in sales. So he promoted these people to this management level. And the thing was that they were great sales guys, but now they're promoted to this next level of management and they're not really doing that good. And the thing and so how do we take these people that were so passionate, so fired up, and now we put them in a new role and they're like, what the heck do I do? How do I do this? And we promote them almost to that Peter principle, right? To their level of incompetence, and it's frustrating for them. So how do we make sure that we keep the star performers the star performers? How do we make sure that we keep the star performance with that competitive edge? How do we keep these star performers, these zealots? Because it's easy for them to kind of fall off that wagon.
I love it. So yeah, so That's and these are what the article says creates the zombies, right? So the second one is contagious victimization, and this is basically, it's the us against them mentality that comes in. It's water cooler talk. It's the culture of complaining. It's the culture of no self-responsibility for what it is that's being created. And so that contagious victimization can spread like wildfire through organizations, that people then start to get the mentality of, woe is us, it will never get better, they are the problem. And it's one of the things that Karen and I do all the time when we hear a they. Well, when leadership starts walking their talk, well, when they honor the company values, well, when they have better communication, we say, so if you were to rate your walking the talk with values on a scale of 1 to 10, what would that be? What is your way of communication now that you've actually just shut down and you're not even trying anymore? Like, we'll say it in a productive way, but those are the kinds of concepts that we share with people, is to realize that usually what people complain about, there's the element that they're doing themselves, and how do they do the self-responsibility.
You know, Jen, I think another big part about this one too is that us versus them mentality.
Right.
And one of the things that we've done, which is kind of like a tool that we've helped some of the leaders really work with a concept that we call nobody bitches alone. And what that is about how to have the conversations with the us and the them. So for example, somebody can't come to my office and complain about Jen without bringing Jen with them. Of course, nobody would ever do that, honey. But the thing is that what happens in a lot of organizations is people go to the leader and they bitch about Jen, and then it causes that separation. So what we teach people how to do is how to have those conversations where when you're having an issue with somebody, you basically bring that person to the leader with you, and you have a healthy conflict kind of discussion. Because this contagious victimization thing that happens is, if we keep the us versus them, it stays into a lot of what we see, a lot of just office BS politics stuff. But when we can have people make conscious choices about how we're going to move forward with this, it's so much more successful.
The last one is the assembly line or herd mentality, and this is what Karen and I will refer to as the 8 and gate or 8 and skate, depending on where you come from, mentality of just sort of, I do my job, I don't care about the job, and I clock in and clock out kind of thing. And that's what creates the zombie. So, Kara, I know we're coming up at the top of the hour, so I'm going to just quickly share. We don't have a slide on this, so I'm going to just quickly share with you guys what this article says are the 5 ways to get people to be zealots.
Yes.
You know what's gonna happen? Karen's gonna go to the Webster dictionary that has the audible part, and she's just gonna play the word like 18 times. She did that to me with crayon, just saying. Okay, so the 5 things about helping people to convert them over to the positive side, away from the zombies. The first one is knowing, right? And that's basically clarity, giving the team and people clarity on what they need to know that's creating confusion. The second thing is love, which sounds all nice and sweet and wonderful and let's hug, but it's really about recognition and recognizing people for their achievements. The third characteristic that's needed in an engaged environment is going to be dialogue. Being able to have conversations. What does that sound like? Being able to be real, being able to be solution focused, but yet share about the relationship through dialogue. The fourth is turning work into a game. That's all I got. Then the fifth is around bravery, which I equate that to truth telling, and how do you encourage people to speak up about what they feel is truth within the organization. So
And
So
I think
that,
part of this, Jen, is the difficult conversations, right? And that bravery is helping them have those difficult conversations.
oh, completely, completely. All right, so before we open it up for Q&A, we want to share the following. We have our next webinar is not for a while. It's February 25th, and it's about getting real and developing leaders through emotional intelligence. February 25th at noon. And Kara, we had a couple dates that we're tossing around. What dates are they? February
6th and 7th?
6th and 7th, we're going to let you guys know about it, but we're going to do a special webinar at that point. We're going to pull in and do a panel discussion from leadership coaches that work in different industries and what they have found effective, what's working well, and we're going to have a panel discussion to be able to discuss that. So we'll send that out via email.
And then that's going to be at night, Jen. That's going to be an 8 p.m. Eastern time call.
Okay, so an evening call. And then also just a reminder to check out our coach training program. We do have early enrollment. We changed the date. I'll be perfectly transparent. We did that today. The early enrollment ends February 27th. And the interesting thing is, a lot has to do with the government shutdown. So we've had agencies and individuals from agencies go through our program, and with the uncertainty of when that's going to end, sometimes it doesn't feel right to make a financial commitment right in the middle of that. So we've decided to extend the early enrollment. You save $500 off the program, but that will be through February 25th. And we have a couple of just interesting case studies here that you can read while we're taking some Q&A. Or not, they're not case studies. What are they?
Testimonials.
Testimonials. That's it.
But one thing though, Jen.
Zealot.
Yes. Zealot. Did you hear that? Do it again, Kara.
Zealot.
I love it. See, all day long, and we're in Florida right now, and we're going to go down to my parents this afternoon, and we will be saying that word again and again and again. And Wendy says, I think you're saying it correctly. Okay, so what do you guys got? What questions do you have for us about anything we talked about or nothing we talked about? So this is sort of the open Q&A part. We're very happy to answer questions. And for the record, Jen, Lindsay, I know you probably have been taking notes in the background. I found one typo. I don't know if there's more.
How many more are there, Jen?
You can just type in and tell us. She's always our good person to tell us. The problem is she usually tells it while we're doing it. So, okay, what do you guys got? What questions? You can raise your hand. We'd be happy to talk to you live, or we can do it through the webinar chat. Questions? Oh, good. Jen only saw one so far. Oh, I saw two. Scott, if you saw that, there's two. All right, perfect. How do you initiate a healthy conflict if you're an employee? Okay, so that's really great. A healthy conflict, if you're an employee, one is to decide, what do you want the outcome to be from the conflict, right? So what's the bigger goal? If Karen and I have a conflict on how to approach something, it's rising above, I say this, Karen says this. What's our real objective, and what can we both agree on, right? Even, I will tell you, the answer we can both agree on is we both are passionate about this topic, or we both care deeply about finding a resolution. But being able to think of that in advance. And then it's also before the conversation, it's about figuring out, what do you want the outcome to be? And then how do you approach the conversation to co-create the outcome, right? So I've been thinking about this, and I've been really struggling. I found that I'm holding back some of my opinions and thoughts. And I'm wondering if we could come together to try to find some solutions on how to move past this, right? And what do you think is the larger issue? So beside he said, she said, or whatever, it's really about figuring out from the bigger picture, what does the relationship need more than the way I think we should approach it? Great question, Tom. Very cool. All right, who else? What other questions you got going on? I think we're good. Are we good? All right. I know I was ready. Karen, when you were you're like, and one more story. I'm like, oh, it won't be me that's pushing us past the top of the hour. But on that note, we are gonna we're gonna skedaddle. And so thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, you can always email us or Erica or Alan or anyone on our team to be able just to talk about any challenges you're having with leadership coaching. Please know that we are here to support. We love this stuff. We can't get enough of it. And the truth is organizations need us everywhere.
How's that go, Jen?
Everywhere.
And on that note, I think we're out.
All right. We'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.